Hello everyone, this is Fazana from Fazana's Law, and in today's video I'll be sharing with you all my top 10 tips on how to pass the drafting module in the legal practice course. So if you're interested to find out all those 10 tips, then please keep watching this video till the end. Before I begin revealing you all what are those 10 tips, I would like to let you know what is actually known as drafting and what does it actually mean in the LPC. So in LPC, drafting means basically filling out forms in a way. So if you're going to be filling out forms, filling out contracts, filling out any kinds of forms in general, whether that's in business law, in property law, or litigation for that matter, and so on, it's going to be a skill that you're going to be using it for the rest of your life as a lawyer, as a solicitor, or even as a barrister, even before filling out several different kinds of forms. So it's basically the act of writing out words on a paper, and that's very important. And if you have done any courseworks in your life or any assessments that was written and it was coursework style, then you probably know you have to do a lot of drafts as well. So that's kind of similar to that. So you have to do drafts basically. And the City Law School teaches you a certain kind of drafting when it comes to probably business law. So it's most likely to be business law, I believe. So they will teach you a very certain kind of a way of drafting, but that's not the ultimate way of drafting, of course, because different types of subjects require you to draft different kinds of things and differently. So do not feel frightened that you will have to do that for the rest of your life as a solicitor. So yeah, that will be the definition of drafting in the LPC. So the first tip I can give you in terms of drafting is making sure that you're attending all the workshops. This is probably one of the most bog standard and very standard tip that I can give you, because drafting is a type of an assessment that you will need to attend workshops no matter what, because otherwise you will feel really lost as to what to put where and how to draft the particular scenario and whatever you're given. So it's very important that you're attending all the workshops in the drafting sessions and tutorials. And I may have missed sometimes one or two, and then the next time I would feel completely lost. So it's very important that you are attending all the workshops in the drafting tutorial, and you will see how the answers do differ from time to time and from tutorial to tutorial. So yeah, I highly recommend for you to attend all the workshops. The second tip I can give you is making sure that you are knowing exactly what the teacher expects you to draft and how to draft it as well, because this differs of course from teacher to teacher, but make sure that whoever your tutor is, you're asking them how do they expect you to draft in the assessment, and how to really make sure that you are doing it in the correct way, because sometimes you might see online some resources where they teach you how to draft, but those might not be exactly what the teacher is looking for. So please do not rely on online websites or online tutorials or online videos where they teach you how to draft just because your teacher is not really a good teacher, maybe, I don't know. But make sure that you are knowing exactly how to draft your assessments and all the tutorial work and everything according to what the teacher wants, because even if the answer is correct, that's not exactly what the teacher might be looking for, and then that's not how they have taught you. And they will definitely recognize when you're using something that is not theirs and it's not their style basically. So make sure that you are trying to understand how and why and what the teacher is expecting out of you when it comes to drafting. The third tip I can give you in terms of drafting is making sure that you're knowing the business law and practice module really, really well inside out, because most of it will be coming in handy when it comes to drafting. And of course, drafting can be done also in property law and litigation, of course, but the most part when it comes to the LPC is all related to the business law and practice. So make sure that you are revising from time to time when it comes to the drafting tutorials. Alongside that, you also revise for business law, because that would really, really help you when it comes to knowing the basic definitions of words such as directors, shareholders, and who's present, who's not present, who's in attendance of the meeting, and so on. So it's very, very important that you are making sure that you're knowing the business law and practice side module inside out. So my fourth tip for you is making sure that you are creating like a kind of like a checklist of all the things that needs to be done before you send it off as a deadline, or before you actually submit it all and so on. So it's very, very important that you create a kind of like a checklist. So for example, have you put the right address, or have you put the right names, have you put the right clauses, have you put the right tabulation and the punctuation, the name, and so on. So it's very, very important that you go really detailed when it comes to before sending off or submitting for deadline or for anything like that. Is making sure that you are putting it very, very well, that everything is correctly done, the grammar, punctuation, spelling, the names, the directors, the shareholders, the present, meeting, attendance, the clauses, the tabulation. Do you need to add anything? Do you need to subtract anything? It's very, very important that you ask these questions yourself first before you submit it, because once you submit it, of course, you can't do anything about it anyway. So it's very important that beforehand you create like a really good long checklist on all the things that need to be ticked off before you submit the answer. Tip number 5 is making sure that you are reading the facts given to you very, very carefully, because sometimes the question gives the answer itself or gives hints as to the answers. So it's very important that you are reading the question and the facts very, very carefully, because those will provide you with kind of hints as to what to add and what not to add in terms of different clauses, because sometimes some clauses might be very useless as to the template that is given to you already. So it's very important that you know exactly that which one to delete and which one to add. And for that, the best thing to do is, of course, look back at the workshop tutorials, answers, and everything like that, or look at previous ones, or see some example answers, and especially the formative, because formative is usually the reflection of what might come in the assessment. So it's very important that you're going through all the materials and making sure that you're reading the facts of the scenario very carefully. And if it talks about something related to a lease or a shareholder or whatever it is, make sure that you are reading it and very carefully, and you don't know exactly what to add from then on. So do not just add things unnecessarily because they think that they will help you, but make sure that you're reading the facts very carefully, because adding irrelevant things is also going to make you lose marks, so you don't want to do that. Tip number 6 is making sure that even if you do not know anything about drafting, please do still submit the formative, or please do attempt the mock, because if you attempt the mock, they will definitely going to give you feedback, and if the feedback is really bad, long and lengthy, and you don't want to see it, you would want to see it, because it will teach you how to really make sure that you're getting the best of the best grades in the exam and you're passing that assessment. Because when teachers give you feedback, it's for a good reason, it's not for a bad reason ever. So it's making sure that you are being smart about it and attempt the mock regardless, even if you understand the topic or not. And you will definitely get a feedback from the tutor that is marking it, and they will tell you exactly where you went wrong. And you can always use that and put it as a checklist again to make sure that before submitting you have checked off or ticked off everything that the teacher expects you to do in a way. And also, again, this is a really good way for you to really understand where you're missing out and what the teacher expects you to do, of course, and of course, how to really make sure that you're passing in general. So it's very important that you are please attempting the mock. I cannot stress that enough, because even if the feedback is good or bad, it's going to really help you in the long run. Next tip I will give you in terms of drafting module is making sure that you are drafting your assessment in plenty of time instead of rushing it, because usually you get a week to complete it. But please make sure that you start it as soon as possible. Even if you have got a lot of things going on in your life, please do not leave it to the last minute and thinking that you'll just pass it because you just filling out some form or filling out some words. But that's not true, because if it's something that you have not read before maybe, or something that is additional to some things that you have not done before in the workshop, then you will struggle in the last few days when you have to really submit it and send it off. And it's all about just being smart and starting it off first so that you have plenty of time instead of rushing it to complete it and submit it on time. Because also sometimes you will realize that even if you start at the beginning of the assessment days, let's say in day 1, and in day 5 or 6 you realize you have missed something out and you have to add something. So it's very important that you're giving yourself enough time for the drafting assessment. I would highly recommend as soon as you get the facts, you start reading it off and you start from day 1 and how to fill it out, because then you have enough time. Because drafting, although it seems very easy, it is not. I'm telling you. So especially if the scenario is not something that you have ever looked at. So it's very important that you are starting it as soon as possible. So tip number 8 is making sure that you are checking your work 10 times before submitting it. The reason why I suggest you to do, because as I said before, proofreading is very, very important when it comes to drafting, because if you miss out something or you wrote someone else's name wrong or you didn't capitalize it, for example, that's going to actually make you lose marks, and eventually you'll get just barely a pass or you'll fail eventually. Because this assessment is very scary, because it's either fail or pass. It's not going to give you a 60% or a 70% or a 50% and so on. So you want to make sure that you are completing everything as nicely, as good as possible, because if there is 1 or 2 or 3 mistakes, they might think that you're not capable or you're incompetent to actually fulfill this particular module. So it's very important that you're submitting your work 10 times and you check it 10 times proofread it as many times as possible before submitting it so that you are satisfied with it, you are happy with it, and you are content and satisfied that you actually have done your best and you can now submit it. So please, 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 please proofread the work as much as possible. The next step I can give you is making sure that you're gathering all the workshop answers into one guide, and you try to collect that as quickly as possible as soon as the module begins, because in that way you will have all the answers in one rather than trying to look at many different resources in online or in physical format and so on. So I highly recommend for you to create like a bundle almost of all the answers of different kinds of scenarios of drafting module of workshops, and you put them in one together, and then when the assessment arrives you will know exactly to look at this bundle only, and then you will have to check the answers accordingly and try to use that as a guide basically. So it's very important that you create your own guides in the LPC, because you feel very overwhelmed as to how much material there is, how many resources there is for you to use. So it's highly recommendable for you to actually making sure that you're using the bundle, your own bundle, you create your own bundle of all the answers to different kinds of scenarios in the LPC. And the last tip I can give you in terms of drafting is practice, practice, practice. There's no better way to gain a pass in drafting rather than actually practicing different kinds of scenarios and answers, because with practice comes confidence, and with confidence you will be able to submit that work very confidently and very satisfied that you've done your best. And even if it's a fail at the end, you at least tried your best and you can do the best again in the next time around. So it's very important that you are practicing as much as possible and you're giving your best, because in all these assessments, remember, if you give your best this time, you will not need to redo it again in the next time around. So it's very important that you are taking these assessments very seriously the first time around and do not try to fail anything, honestly. So, and drafting is one of them. So it's making sure that you are being very smart and very confident by practicing as much as possible for drafting. So this brings me to the end of today's video. I hope you really enjoyed this video on how to really pass the drafting module in the legal practice course, and this has really helped you in gaining some insight on how to really pass, because drafting, I know it was one of the most difficult ones for me, because sometimes I would forget certain words and something like that, or different clauses, and then I would eventually fail, and that would be a very big problem. So I really hope that these 10 tips have really helped you in terms of how to pass the drafting module in the legal practice course. And also I would like to let you know that I'm making these videos as a way to help every single one of you that might be going through this struggle of how to really pass the LPC, because there's not much resources on YouTube about how to pass in general. So I'm trying to be really useful and valuable and trying to share with you all these videos. And if you do, please like this video, share this video, and comment down below any questions you may have. But other than that, I will see you guys in my next week's video.